2 for Chapter 13, we'll talk about choosing presentation aids and preparing them. Okay, so presentation aids should illustrate the most important ideas, the things that you really want your audience to remember, things that you want to have an impact about. They can also help you clarify complex ideas. So in the video for part 1, there was a process slide with a chart. So if you've got something really complex that has a number of steps, a presentation aid can help you illustrate that. Think about how many visual aids you should have. That will depend on the type of speech that you have, who your audience is, what the venue looks like, and how long your speech is. The presentation aids that you use, keep in mind the size of the audience and the size of the room. If you're giving a presentation to 20 people in a conference room, a large poster could do the trick. But if you're in front of 100 people in a stadium style or a theater style room, that probably won't work because the people in the back wouldn't be able to see it. You need to know if the equipment you want to use, so if you're going to play a sound clip, does the room have the technology to support that? So presentation aids need to be easy to use, and you have to be able to transport them to the speech site. So if you're fumbling around trying to get a video to work, or you have a model of something and it's very complicated to demonstrate, that may not be the best choice. So your presentation aids need to enhance the oral message that you're delivering. And they have to be easy to prepare with your time frame and budget. So it might be really cool to have this audio visual, this video clip, but if you can't afford a professional photographer, or if you don't have the time to do all of that yourself, that might not be realistic. You also need to make sure that whatever you are using, that you demonstrate cultural sensitivity. So some guidelines for preparing your presentation aids. First, you want to limit the reading required. And if you create slides, you must follow the 6-6 rule, which is 6 bullets per slide with only 6 words per bullet. You do not want to have complete sentences on slides unless it is a quote that you're using. And if you have slides, if you use them for a handout, handouts can be distracting if you give them out during or prior to your speech. You want them listening to you and looking at you. You don't want their heads down reading any handout. Also, look for how other people have handled this. If you can find presentation aids that others have used and you can just customize them for your purposes, absolutely do that. Just be sure that you give credit where credit is due. If you're using the work of someone else, make sure that you cite them. Be sure the entire audience can see or hear your presentation aid. So if you're going to play an audio clip, for example, you need to make sure that the sound system gets that audio clip to every corner of the room. If you're creating slides, the font that you use, the size of the type that you use should be at least 24 points. And it depends on the font, but that's kind of a good rule to follow. It needs to be at least 24-point font or larger. The font that you use should be easy to read. So I've got 2 fonts here. Times New Roman is used frequently because it's very easy to read. But other fonts can be very difficult to read, especially far back. So choose your fonts carefully. Whatever visual aid you have, whatever presentation aid you have, it should look nice or be aesthetically pleasing. Use graphic illustrations, so try to veer away from only having words, and use color strategically. You might put something in color to emphasize a keyword or a phrase or a number. Now, to display a presentation aid, posters can be good. If you're going to make them yourself, it's probably going to be, on a poster board that you can acquire easily. If you're in a company and you need to have a giant poster, like the picture that's shown here, those all can be created by professionals. Whiteboards or chalkboards can be helpful if you're going to quickly illustrate a process, for example. Flip charts can be used. If you're going to use a flip chart, it's a good idea that you work on that flip chart ahead of time so that you're not, scrambling to get all the words on right away, and you want to make sure everything is spelled correctly. So, flip chart, it's just a big pad of paper on an easel. If you're going to use it, you want to leave pages between it so that you can't read through. The type doesn't kind of bleed through it. And it has to be neat and easy to read. You really have to practice your handwriting on it. Handouts, again, be careful about handouts, because if you give it out in the beginning of a speech, people will be reading it, they won't be listening to you. Handouts should be supplied at the end of a speech if you're giving it to them, that it has like some reference materials on it, or some other sources, or just more information. Document cameras, you see these used in classrooms all the time. If there's a photograph or an object that needs to be displayed, they're good for that. And then, of course, you can use computers and projectors to play videos or audio. Okay, so using the presentation aids, you need to plan when you're going to use each aid. So if you are creating your outline and you're going to have 2 or 3 different types of presentation aids, maybe you're going to have an object and a model of something and an audio clip. Make sure that you include that in your notes so you know exactly when you're going to use each one of those. Make sure that you are set up and ready for those aids before you give your speech. If you're giving a speech in a large room, make sure you know how to work the equipment and that technology doesn't become a barrier. Only incorporate the presentation aids when you're talking about whatever is on them. Don't do anything in advance that'll throw off your audience. Again, pass out if you've got samples of something or if you've got handouts, that should be after the speech. You talk about a visual aid while you are showing it, and if you have an audio clip, talk about it before and after you play the audio clip. And that brings us to the end of part 2.